Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Steve Parker of Steve Parker ICD, International Company Development and Enterprise Lab. You can find us on the Startup Scaleup Summit website that you've joined into us with today. Fireside chat, welcome to my fireside, welcome to my living room. And we're going to get straight underway. Really pleased to introduce you to a business colleague, someone who's really famous in my part of the world and will be in your part of the world too. We've got a really interesting topic, starting and scaling a business in uncertain times. So we thought we'd find a man who's done that 3 times, and he's going to tell us all about it. Good afternoon, Ninder Johal.
Good afternoon, Stephen. I must say your fireplace looks impressive.
Well, we did polish it a little bit, knowing that it was going to be on the, on the internet. Otherwise, it's not normally this tidy. Don't worry. So thanks for joining us. You've done so much in your career, and we've decided that if we work our way through it, people will learn a lot from what you've gone through, where your ideas came from, how you turned into a reluctant entrepreneur, and lots more. So if it's okay with you, let's tease it all out. Who was it that said, if you start at the very beginning, it's a very good place to start? I don't know whether that was a philosopher or Julie Andrews, but about 1990, you decided to start your first business.
Yeah, so I was, I did a degree in finance and accountancy. So I wanted to become an accountant, Steve. But upon graduation, 16 interviews later, it was determined that the accountancy profession thought, you're not right for us. So it was obvious that wasn't going to happen. So I quickly enrolled on a MBA. And what was good about the MBA was that it exposed me to the wider discipline of business as such, rather than the narrow accountancy and finance function. And I particularly enjoyed the marketing bit. And that was quite important, because when I then got myself a job as a management consultant, which meant, roughly speaking, would go into business units or businesses that were hemorrhaging cash, had liquidity problems, and as a group of 3, we would be asked to sort it out. And I'm very, very interested to let you know the mind of I suppose we were hatchetmen. The mind of a hatchetman is that we would first walk into the car park, Steve, and check out the company cars, because that would tell us how they're spending their money. We would then go and investigate the car parks even closer and look at if places were reserved. So this place is for Steve Parker, this place is for Ninder Johal. That then told us that the self-importance was there. And that gave you a bit of an idea of the culture. And then we'd walk into reception, check the carpet and what's on the walls. And that would give you, before you've even said hello to anyone, really gives you quite a good idea on the sort of culture. So that's more of a finance function. But I had a side hustle. And the side hustle was that I was a tabla player, musician with a Bhangra band. And we were touring simultaneously all around the UK doing gigs. And what was interesting about that was that I was the manager and the musician, but through managing and leading the band, I started to understand, if subliminally, the art of leadership, the art of negotiation. So we've been negotiating with promoters and all kinds of people that were booking us. So I started to enjoy that element, the commercial entrepreneurial element, and in fact such that I jacked the job in and went music full time, set up a label, and the dream was, Steve, that one day the music that I was performing and part of, which is Bhangra music, it's Asian dance music, would one day cross into the charts. So that was the dream, and I set off trying to achieve that dream. That's what got me accidentally into entrepreneurship, because my background is that my parents were working class, worked in the black country in the local foundries. My mother worked at Raleigh Bikes. Do you remember Raleigh Bikes?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. A really good original brand name, wasn't it?
Yeah. And she worked on the assembly line. So there wasn't a hint of entrepreneurship or an element of business thinking anywhere in the household. So this was me just enjoying running the band and all the skills that it brought accidentally. Because those kind of skills, by the way, they don't teach you on an MBA. They don't teach you at a business school.
So were you very good at playing in the band? Have you ever got close to a number one anywhere?
Well, I was okay. I'd say the other musicians were better. I think my job was to ensure that, despite having creative abilities amongst, there was only 18, 19-year-olds, my job was to gel it together, give the musicians the freedom, creative freedom to do what they needed to do, but they had to work within a team ethos and within a team vision. So anybody's running a business, if you've got creative people, let them loose, but they've got to still work within the remit you want them to work, because otherwise you'll have people firing off in all directions. But you've got to give them the space to bring the ideas, because without ideas, no business will thrive. In fact, it will die. And that was what I learned, with fantastic musicians. My job was just to make sure that the bits they don't like, which is the organizational bits, the detail bit, that I looked after that, and negotiation and getting on stage, making sure we play well on stage, getting off on stage, getting the right flights and all that stuff. But just to give you an idea, we had some good fun because we played with the likes of Prodigy, Fatboy Slim, and actually the best act we ever played with, Steve, was Sir Tom Jones. Now he is good. I tell you, he is good. So that was the 90s. So the label was set up in the midst of a recession. And I'm going to be honest with you, I had no idea we were in a recession. I didn't read the newspapers. I didn't read and watch the news. I thought I had a good idea. I thought I had a good dream, a dream that I thought was realizable. And you know something? I didn't see the negativity. I just went for it. Totally went for it. And I ignored what was going on around me. And maybe sometimes they say ignorance is bliss. And
Well,
that's what.
yeah, it's what some of us are protecting ourselves from at the moment, isn't it? The negativity, and we're staying tight to what we believe in, I suppose. So by accident, you'd never run a record label either, had you? That I mean,
No, I haven't. And I think
clearly you just bumped into this,
Yeah. So here's the second learning curve. We can spend our entire lives researching a subject or a product, and you know something, but never doing it, because we always think we don't know enough. Sometimes, as I said, ignorance is bliss. Sometimes motivation and just going for it. And you know something, you will make mistakes because you're learning as you go along, but you'll get better as you go along. That is a much better model than sitting at home trying to perfect something. It just won't happen. It just won't happen. So just go for it. It's uncertain times. Other people are uncertain. So just go for it. You have little to lose, and no one's going to blame you because they know these are difficult times we're in. So yeah, sometimes just go for it.
And so you started then selling and marketing records for other people as well as just your own band. Was that the?
Yeah, sort of. So we signed a lot of artists, and it was one of those artists that then enabled me. Then, and you'll know this as somebody who's international. I knew that if I was going to break a record worldwide, I couldn't wait for people to come to me. I had to go to them. So I then set off booking tickets, flying around the world, going to big trade exhibitions for the music industry. And then trying to sell them records of a music form they couldn't understand, in a lingo they couldn't understand, with a singer's melody they couldn't understand. But you know something, second element, you've got to be persistent and you've got to have faith in your product. And thirdly, you've got to go out, by the way. No one is going to come knocking on your door trying to help you out. So we can sit here and say, well, the government's just got to keep bailing us out. Well, at some point, they're going to stop bailing us out. And so I think it's better to be proactive, go out there, rather than sit. So that was my sort of third learning, I would say to someone, is don't wait for it to happen. You have to make it happen. And by the way, if it doesn't happen, don't blame anyone else. It's probably going to be your fault.
Yeah, it's the getting used to dance in the rain bit, isn't it? The old Mark Twain bit. Don't wait for the storm to pass, otherwise you'll be waiting for a heck of a long while, which is an updated version of what he said. So do you measure the way it developed as being successful? I know most of us are never entirely happy, but you must have been pleased that you got it into several countries and did quite a bit.
Yeah. So it was, listen, the third bit, resilience comes into it. So it took me 10 years, but eventually we charted. We charted number 5 in the UK charts. I still remember turning on Top of the Pops and almost falling off my sofa when I saw my record on Top of the Pops. Jay-Z came on board and we broke the US charts at number 7. We had 9 number 1s through Europe. We knocked off Ronan Keating in Italy. And I'd sort of, Steve, done the impossible. I'd sold a record that nobody could understand. I sold a record that the melody was indistinguishable. I sold a record where they had no idea what the singer was singing. But we racked up, I think it was 750,000 singles, some stupid number in Germany. We went number 2 in Germany. And so I did the impossible. We charted around the world, and it became in 2004, I think, the biggest chart hit of that year. We were on all kinds of compilations, and we picked up loads of awards.
So at least it was one of these tunes where if they didn't sing the right words, it was okay by you anyway.
Listen, I worked on the premise, Steve. I want to show you my age now. I worked on the premise that, you know, when the first time you listen to a rap from America, I challenge you if you can tell me the words first time around. I worked on that premise that if it's the rhythm, the sound, and it's something unique and something different, you'll go for it. And you know something? That formula worked. Nobody understood what he was saying, but actually it didn't matter because the rhythm was, it was just going for it. So I think 3 things. If you have a passion for something, go for it. Secondly, don't worry about the negativity. If it's something good and you have a passion for it, you'll go get through it. Thirdly, have lots of resilience because there are going to be dark moments and dark days. Fourthly, no one's going to do it for you. You have to do it yourself. You have to go out and do it. And fifthly, dream. If you have a dream and you have a passion, you will do it.
Yeah, excellent. So you developed in that, and then was it about 10 years later that you decided to go into what turned out to be a really successful business event organization? Is that how you describe it?
Yeah. So what then happened, and here's my second problem. So I started in one recession, and then the second recession came in 2008. But we had a thunderbolt in the music industry in 2007. And a certain Mr. Jobs came along with this thing called a mobile phone. And what we discovered, Steve, was that people no longer wanted to go to HMV. People no longer wanted to buy something called a CD. Do you remember those things? Nobody wanted.
Behind me.
Yeah, nobody wanted a vinyl. People didn't want to go between 9 and 5 and catch a bus to go and buy these records when they could download it down onto their phone at 3 o'clock in the morning. They didn't have to buy the entire album. They could buy a single track, and their whole consumer journey changed. And suddenly it hit us like a brick. Our response, Steve, as the music industry, was to behave like an ostrich in the sand. We buried our heads and we said, stuff what the consumer wants to do. We're going to do what we think is right, and we will sue everybody in sight for downloading illegal tracks. So people saw the model on iTunes, 79p, but thought, no, we're going to download it for free from other channels. And what then happened was we started to sue the spotty 14-year-old next door who couldn't afford to buy the album, was downloading it for free. We were suing the aunt next door who discovered the wonders of the internet. And guess who lost? We lost. And we lost because we ignored the journey of a customer. So my next piece of advice, are you sure you understand the journey of your customer today? And can you predict the customer's journey tomorrow? Because if you don't, someone else will, and they will take the rug under your feet. Don't be an ostrich in the sand. Anticipate trends. Look around you. See the warning signs. We didn't see the illegal downloading. Never saw it. We thought it would work. Be ready to be disrupted tomorrow, where somebody at the click of a mouse can take you out. And we were being taken out. So not only did we see the shops we were selling to being taken out, not only did we see the wholesalers who were supplying the shops being taken out, sales were flying off a cliff. and people who were supplying the CD manufacturers, they were going bust. Doesn't this sound familiar? So suddenly,
it might just have happened again once or twice along the way, which we're going to talk about.
So we were now questioning our entire business model, and we were seeing something. For the first time, I came across the word technological disruption. But Steve, I tell you what we knew. We were going down the pan, but we knew other people would be following us. And the next bit we saw was people in videos and films. Do you remember Blockbusters?
Yeah, absolutely.
They went. Netflix took them. So
yeah.
I think my advice to people is, just because you got a great business today, tomorrow you could be history. So keep an eye on people working around you. Keep an eye on your industry. More importantly, keep an eye on people outside of your industry, because they might point you to trends that you can't see. So we had a double whammy then. We had declining sales, the business model was changing, the consumer was changing, and then we hit a recession. So I thought, crikey, we got to do something else, because a long-term journey doesn't look great, and the return on investment digital just wasn't good. So the numbers didn't stack up. Next piece of advice: watch your numbers. Make sure you understand your numbers and make sure you can see the trends if something is not going right, and you've got to spot that quite quick. So then I looked at my skill set and my team. We didn't need the forklift drivers anymore. We didn't need people picking up CDs and shipping them abroad. We now needed people who could upload tracks, understood the digital world. And then we thought, let's look at our skill set. We understood music, we understood entertainment, we understood lighting, sound, video production, marketing, branding, because that's what we're doing with artists. Where could we deploy that same set of skills elsewhere? I was used to events. I was used to being on stage, 100,000 people. I thought, you know something? Event production sounds a good idea. And by the way, I've achieved my dream of hitting the mainstream charts. Not much more I can do there. So maybe I'll take another challenge on. That took me to the events game. And Steve, I came across for the first time, big piece of advice, because I didn't know it. I came across the word networking. Never heard of it before.
Well,
but networking.
It hadn't used to be around, had it? It suddenly came out of nowhere.
Yeah, and people said to me, you need to network with people. I said, why? They said, you're not going to find any more business in a new marketplace until you network and grow your brand, your personal brand and your company's brand. I then set about 7-8 years basically attending anything that even involved opening an envelope, just to make sure I got around. We got into event production. I identified entrepreneur space as being somewhere we could target. We also knew that if we made it so that entrepreneurs could learn from attending one of my events, so they'd learn something, they'd be connecting with other people, back to networking, because every business needs it, and we'll be celebrating. The problem, if you're setting up a business, ask yourself, am I solving a problem? If you're not solving a problem, you don't have a business. So the problem I was solving, which is what I asked myself, why would anybody want to come to an event, is I knew, doesn't matter how big or small your business is, we all need to promote our brands individually and businesses. If I could provide people an environment that allows them to do that, I'm solving one of their problems. That's what took me to the space. So starting from one event in Wolverhampton in the Black Country, we went to Birmingham, Signature Awards. We went to Leicester, East Midlands. We went to London. And now we're projecting to go to Manchester. And we've got dates lined up in India, Pakistan, and South Africa.
But like everything, you had to start relatively small, didn't you?
Yeah.
Tell us about your first event. You said it was in Wolverhampton. It must have been a huge risk, a huge scare, or did you just get on and do it anyway?
Okay, so the first one, actually, interestingly, was in Dudley, Copthorne Hotel.
Yeah.
And we had 250 people. Now, I did, again, you could say ignorance is bliss, or maybe I was used to taking risks having run a record company. Because in records, it's a bit like R&D in a pharmaceutical. So you release 10 records, 9 will fail, 1 will be a hit. That 1 hit will pay for the 9. It's a bit like drugs. So you put out 10 drugs. So I was used to making mistakes. I was used to shrugging it off and moving on to the next project, because I was used to that formula that I would be used to 9 failures and something along the line. So it was difficult at times convincing people to invest because they saw it quite right as rolling the dice. But I think if you knew roughly the elements of a track that would make it, then you were on your way. So, but what I did was I did the reverse. So instead of keeping it small in terms of marketing, I threw a lot of money at the marketing. And I worked on the basis that it would take me 3 years to build a brand in terms of, so I threw a lot of money at it. And it was small, the first one. We made lots of mistakes, but every year it started to grow. So we outgrew the Copthorne Hotel and we had to go to the racecourse. And the racecourse we've always sold out. We went to Edgbaston in Birmingham. We outgrew that because that was doing about 450. We then went to 600. That took us to the ICC. East Midlands was saying, bring the formula to us. So we went over to the East Midlands and we started to sell out to the East Midlands. The natural next step was overseas. But before overseas, we had to do London. Because if you go overseas and say you haven't done London, then it becomes a bit of a credibility problem. So we moved to London and we went to Park Lane, Hilton, all ready to rock and roll. And then came March, bang, COVID came. And
because you're slightly underselling it in some ways because the modest bloke that you are, but these became the go-to ticket if you were in business in the Midlands.
Yeah.
You wanted to go to your event because you knew you were going to be fed and watered. You knew you were going to bump into the right people. If you weren't going to bump into them, then if you knew about it, you'd introduce people anyway. And you ended up going from almost being able to sell as many tickets as you liked and turning people away when it got to 500 or 600, didn't you?
Yeah, and I think the success was great because we had brands like Mercedes, Porsche, Qatar Airways, all the big brands wanted to be associated with it. People wanted to come in because they knew that the people in the room were the right people they wanted to meet. So we got the right mix, and people always learned not only if their peers in the room, but we always had a great keynote speakers. We've had Piers Linney, Dragon's Den. We've had Sir John Peace, who used to be chair of Burberry. We've had chairman of Cobra Beer, Karen Bilamaria. We've had some real top-end speakers. So you tend to learn a lot from them. We've had a lot of the regional top politicians in the room. So business had a chance to connect with them. So we got the formula right, and the formula worked. And again, we worked a lot on branding. But again, back to my networking, you have to network strongly. Yeah. I think sometimes we can be fixed too much on the competition, and we think less about what we do. So I think make sure whatever you're doing is true. If you can, be unique, or there's something you offer in the marketplace hasn't got. Don't spend all your time. Of course, you need to understand what the competition's doing, but don't spend all your time concentrating on the competition. Concentrate on your strengths, what makes you good, and where your weaknesses lie. Pull in the resource that will help you to rectify. But work to your strengths. Always focus on your strengths, and surround yourself, Steve. And you and I speak all the time. I always say, surround yourself with people who are better than you. And it's a bit like. It's a bit like playing football. If you wanted to be really good, you want to play with the best players. If you want to win all the time, just take out your 5-year-old son, thrash him 10-0, and you can feel good about yourself, but it's not going to get you very far.
Yeah.
You need to play with people better than you. You need to play with people who are much cleverer than you, because you know something, they will drag you up. And I think I've been fortunate that I've always bumped into these kind of people. And I suppose subconsciously they've brought me up without me realizing. And I think the other piece that you and I have always spoken about is ask yourself what you do for your community. So as you know, I sit on the local enterprise partnership. I sit on the West Midlands Combined Authority. I sit on a number of other boards. And whilst I'm giving something back to the community, you know something, I'm surrounded by such clever people. It's no accident that I'm going to pick up some of their traits.
Yeah. Now, people are going to want to watch this again anyway, but we've got to move on. The events industry, obviously, everything became a bit of an issue. So you decided to come up with the Business Influencer magazine, which people can see on the strapline underneath the summit anyway. And by cue, as if we'd rehearsed it, you just happen to have a copy there. We've got 3 or 4 minutes to keep it there as long as you want, as far as I'm concerned. We've got a few minutes to talk about that.
Yeah. So
Tell
then
us
what
about
happened?
Business Influence magazine.
Yeah, so then what happened? Obviously, come March, there was a panic on because it wasn't sure now. We only heard about the news of the vaccine last week. But you know something? We weren't sure where this was going. So we cancelled our Birmingham event. We cancelled our Wolverhampton event. We cancelled our Leicester event. We cancelled our Birmingham, London event. We spoke to the guys in India and said, you better hold because you're gripped with COVID, as we are. And my worry then was, worst case scenario, this could run for 2-3 years. How do we plug the gap in the meantime? How do we stay in touch with this wonderful audience we've been packing into our events? How do we stay in touch with wonderful people in the media and those who are connected like you, Steve? How do we connect with all the big sponsors that have been supporting us? What's the vehicle to keep our brand relevant? And this was
here it is.
So we have great articles on leadership, entrepreneurship, the role of technology, the importance of place, manufacturing, the importance of export, global, why you should look at global. If you want, or you are a successful business or an entrepreneur, and you want to understand what's happening around you, back to my point, you must know what's happening around you, then this is the perfect read. And
people can access that through the summit or by contacting you over the next couple of days anyway, can't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And you can order it through the website, www.thebusinessinfluencer.co.uk.
Fantastic. And that's going to be taken globally as well, because there's a real interest in British entrepreneurship globally as well, isn't there?
Yes,
and,
there is.
looking forward to helping you with that and getting it out into. It'll soon be seen in a hotel and people wherever you go in the world when we're allowed to travel. So a couple of minutes left. Remind us of some of your key pieces of advice that you'd give to people. Apart from the resilience and the transferable skills bit, you've shown that you can do almost anything that you put your mind to if you want to, can't you?
I think a number of things. Have a positive mindset. You're not going anywhere without a positive mindset. That's key number one. Key number two, surround yourself by positive people that are better than you. If you're surrounded by negative people, they will drag you down. So positive mindset, positive people around you is key. Thirdly, keep an eye on the numbers. The numbers are essential. Most companies, businesses go bust because they haven't kept an eye on the numbers. Numbers is completely key. Understand your customer's journey. Make sure you keep a real close eye on that, what makes them tick. Make sure you concentrate on your own personal brand and your business's brand. So don't cut back in terms of uncertainty. In fact, if anything, put your front forward. Now, I've spent a fortune putting this together, but I know long term, I think it will work. So those are just, the top 5 I think I just gave you there. If you can get those 5, and by the way, employ people with creative minds. We've been always brought up to think like a sportsman. They always say, think like a sportsman. Make sure you've got a real detailed plan where you want to get to and stick to it. I think what COVID has proved, long-term planning is key. But what's even more key during the short term is creative thinking. You've got to be able to creatively move out of obstacles. There's no point in having a plan. Remember, I had a big plan. I'm going to sell 1 million copies of CDs. The internet came along. So suddenly that plan got ripped up. COVID's come along. That's ripped up a lot of plans. So you need to be creative. Try and think your best decisions, not in stressful positions. So if you can, regularly update your ideas. Put them on a piece of paper. Park them. Always revisit them. Because you'll be amazed how you can make great decisions even in stressful times.
Ninder, as always, it's been fantastic talking to you. We always have a great conversation, whether it's on radio, whether it's on here. I'd encourage you, if you have been listening, apologies if we didn't get round to 1 or 2 of your questions, but I'm sure we've answered them in the insight that Ninder's shared with us. Please go on the Summit website, have a look at the Business Influencer, get in touch with Ninder. He'll be more than happy to speak to you. He'll be happy to network with you as well. So in the meantime, good luck with the next stage of your venture. I'm enjoying sharing it with you from being nearby. And I've been Steve Parker. Thanks for tuning into this fireside chat. The main man has been Ninder Johal, I'm sure he's given us lots of tips to go away and work on this startup scale up. Ninder, thanks ever so much for your time this afternoon.
Cheers.